Doug Duke is a family counselor and sports counselor. I've known Doug a few years, and Doug does an excellent job of not only addressing the needs of families, individuals, coaches, players, teams, but he also does a great job of explaining the connection between the spiritual aspect, the mental, and the physical. You'll enjoy this video, and it'll give you a great deal of information about yourself, so as to help yourself grow, but also help your family, your staff, your team, and your players.
Okay, we're going to finish this up in just a few minutes, and for any questions that you have, and then we'll dismiss. Several good questions during the break that I want to get to, and but what I want to do is finish up where I went to my doctor. He prescribed me 30 milligrams of Cymbalta. The reason I personally chose Cymbalta with the research I did, because it worked on anxiety, it worked on low-level depression, which we call dysthymia. A lot of times people think of depression as you're laying in the bed and you can't do anything. Those are severe cases of depression. Millions what we call dysthymia. That is a low-level functional depression. You can do what you have to do, but it's like, I don't have any energy. I can't concentrate. I can't focus. Again, with me, I was just really, really irritable, moody. I describe it like being a wasp, just sitting ready to pop somebody. I mean, any little reason to go off on somebody. And that's not my temperament. That's not my personality. Sleep patterns were awful. I mean, if I had to wake up in the middle of the night, go use the restroom, I might as well just stay up, okay? Because I could not go back to sleep and shut my mind off. And those are the characteristics of dysthymia. And then, am I okay with microphone-wise? Doing okay? Okay. Those are the characteristics of dysthymia and anxiety, because serotonin kind of works on both of those, okay? Also, what I liked about Cymbalta was a lot of doctors prescribe that for joint pain. And I don't know about any of you old ex-athletes, but I have so much tendonitis and arthritis. I did have a knee surgery on this right knee. And it's great for joint pain. So for me, it kind of hit a lot of different areas. I have been taking Cymbalta now for 14 years, which is extraordinary that it hits. Usually, if you take an SSRI type of medication, it's going to last maybe 3 or 4 years, and then it kind of loses its effectiveness. But for me, this has continued to work. I had a great question from a gentleman who said, do you have to stay on medicine forever if you start taking it? The question is, sometimes yes, sometimes no, okay, the answer. Sometimes the stress in your life, going through a divorce or losing a loved one, losing a job, or it can be positive stress. It can be moving to a new job, or getting married or something like that. Sometimes just extra stress that comes into your life, that can help lower the serotonin levels, just all of the extra stress. In those cases, a person may go on medication. I usually recommend that if you go on medication, you try it for at least 1 year, okay? You go for at least a year. And this is something that's important too. Medication is trial and error. Now, the good news is modern medicine, typically through psychiatrists, have developed a way to swab the back of your throat and do some DNA testing that can help them better match the right medication for a person, okay? Before that, it was just trial and error. Let's try this Cymbalta. If the Cymbalta didn't work, you tried something else, and it can be very frustrating, okay? Very frustrating process. I was very fortunate. Cymbalta for me, I was on 30 milligrams for 2 weeks, then bumped up to 60, which is for most people a therapeutic dose. And here's what I noticed. I noticed for the first time in years, I could sleep through the night. I'd wake up in the morning and actually had energy, okay? I was like, wow. I felt normal again. I could control my thoughts. I could concentrate, I could focus. My patience level went from there to about there. I can still lose my patience, okay? It just takes longer to get there. A lot calmer. I love to laugh. I love to joke. I love to cut up and play. All of that came back, okay? All of that came back. And once that happened, what I do personally is I exercise regularly because my job is it's a high emotional job. I'm hearing stuff and dealing with stuff for hours and hours all day long. I have to have an outlet just like you do. Every one of you has to have a physiological outlet, okay? If you don't, then you're going to store all of that cortisol and stress and adrenaline in your body, and it will kill you, okay? It will cause high blood pressure. It will cause heart disease, hardening of the arteries, nasty, nasty things in you. You've got to have outlets for your stress. Eating, trying to eat healthy. Be around good people. I do not like to hang out with negative people. I mean, it just, oh my gosh, it sucks the life out of me. So make sure the people that you do life with are positive people. I like to laugh. If I want to be around somebody, we're going to laugh. We're going to have fun, okay? Sense of humor. You've got to do things that are uplifting to you. If you don't, you're going to go down a really, really bad path there. Another question was also, is all of the depression always chemical? Not necessarily. If you're living a life of sin, if you're a believer, if you're a Jesus follower, and the Holy Spirit lives in you, and you're openly, by choice, living a life of sin, the Holy Spirit's going to begin to convict you. And over time, if you're not doing what Jesus has called you to do, it will affect you emotionally, it will affect your thoughts, and it will affect your will, okay? So there can be spiritual depression, okay, or demonic depression. You remember back in the Old Testament, David used to play his harp before Saul. You remember what it said? It says, and the spirit departed, okay, away from him. So, yes, for the believer particularly, there can be depression. And I think that's where a lot of Christians really exclude the medication route. They want to many times think that all depression is from some spiritual issue or some spiritual root. And sometimes it's just medical. And I've had people, and listen, I respect people. When they come into my office, especially if we're dealing with kids, and they say, Doug, I don't want my kid to take medication. I said, look, I totally understand that. That is y'all's call. That is y'all's decision. But sometimes they say, we just believe that that we don't want medication. We believe that God's going to heal this. And I said, I respect that too. I believe God can heal physical issues in us. He doesn't always choose to do so, but He can, okay? But I usually go on to tell them, if we get into a conversation, if your child gets in a car accident and is physically injured, don't call the ambulance, okay? Go and pray over them. Because if you're going to believe God to heal their brain physically, then you've got to be consistent. You can't pick and choose what God's going to heal and what He's not going to heal. I don't try to do that in a smart alecky way, but I try to show them that they're being very inconsistent. If they don't believe that God's going to work in this organ, then why would He not work in that organ or the other organs of the body? The brain is an organ in the body that operates off of a chemical process that is dying. And as it dies and malfunctions, it will affect your emotions, your intellect, and your will. And you better treat it, okay? If you don't treat that organ, then these things typically don't get any better. That doesn't mean that you don't treat the spiritual realm if it needs to be treated. If you're living in sin, then you're going to have great conviction. You're going to be sad. You're going to struggle. And you got to deal with the sin in your life. But there's a lot of times that people really don't have an underlying sin problem. They have a brain problem, okay? Part of the counseling is I have to try to figure out which is what. And that's trial and error, and it takes time. Just like a kid that comes in, I don't know if they can't help their behavior, so I don't want to punish somebody if they can't help it, but I sure don't want to reward the behavior if they do have control over it. And sometimes it takes time to figure that out. So for me, I've been on the medicine 13, 14 years now. I hope it continues to work like it has worked, because for me, it gave me my life back. My wife doesn't have to follow me anymore in the car. I can drive by myself now. It doesn't mean I don't worry. Just by nature, I'm a worrier. But it doesn't shut my life down, okay? I can be concerned about things. Just like my daughter's 16, she's driving now, okay? I taught her how to drive. I drove and drove and drove with her. I said, I've taught you. You're a good driver. I'm going to pray over you. I'm going to trust God's will for you. And I let it go. We do track on the Life 360, okay? But I don't obsessively worry about that. I can be concerned with that word. And that's the difference. People say, Doug, what's anxiety and what's normal? Anxiety is when you can't stop, okay? It's like Coach said, I got to the point where I was paranoid about stuff too. I'd hear something and I'd say, oh my gosh, is that person following me? Did I counsel somebody the wrong way? Have they called the police? It's crazy stuff. But that's what anxiety will do. It can make you paranoid, okay? It really can. So this is an introduction, okay? An introduction to kind of a Cliff Notes version of how we're wired and some of the things that go on. And when I'm counseling somebody, I'm thinking about all of these things when they come in, and we have to try to figure out what is the root of what's going on. And it can be multiple things that's happening simultaneously. And once we deal with the physical, then we start doing cognitive counseling. We get people on a really good stress management program. We get them making lifestyle changes. One of the biggest lifestyle changes you have to make if you have anxiety, learning to say no, okay? Learning to say no. It's so difficult for me to say no because I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. I have a waiting list to get into my practice that's that long. It's really, really long. And really tough needs. I mean, people calling, Doug, my marriage is falling apart. I know you can help us. Please help us. Well, what does that do to a guy like me? I want to help them. But to do that, I'll have to stay there at midnight, okay? It's going to destroy my health. It's going to make my wife and I need marriage counseling, okay? It's going to make my kids not have their daddy at home. So at some point, I have to learn these are the boundaries. Great book, by the way, Boundaries by Loudon Townsend. Great book. Learning to help. That really helps people that battle anxiety learn to set good parameters to say no. And it can be to really good things, okay? Like coming and doing a seminar, okay? I love doing this because Coach and I are very close, and I enjoy doing that. But the first thing I do, Coach usually gives me several dates, and I go talk to my family. What's going on? What's going on with our family? Okay? Because I don't want to just say yes and then hurt my family. Okay? So learning to say no. I'm going to stop there and see if you have questions, because we could go on forever, but we're not. Set a boundary. Okay? Questions?
Mm-hmm. Healthy,
Yeah.
like butterflies or nervousness, concern, or however you want to call it. Can you go into that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. What's the line between normal anxiety or normal worry and anxiety? Anxiety becomes debilitating. Anxiety is the kid who really can't go to school because they're worried so much about getting called on in class that they're throwing up the night before. They worry to a point that they start having physiological symptoms. And I always remember, in your children, especially children that are introverted, you're going to have a lot of stomach pain. That's kind of the number one symptom we look for in children. And it can happen in athletes, is stomach pain, because just the internalization and that cortisol in the system. Cortisol is great. Adrenaline is great if you're about to fight somebody. You want it going through your body, just like as an athlete, okay? You get there, you're out there on the field, and that national anthem's going, you're ready to, start hitting somebody. So that's normal to get the sympathetic nervous system wired up. But if it gets wired up to the point that you're throwing up, or you can't concentrate, or you get physically sick, then we've got problems. It's kind of like obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD. Most of us are OC, okay, obsessive compulsive. But once it becomes a disorder, that means it is affecting our daily lives. We're late to work because we're checking the doorknob 100 times, okay? We're late for work because we're checking to make sure the stove's cut off for 200 times, okay? Then it becomes a disorder when it starts to affect our daily routines. Most athletes have tics, right? Certain things, obsessions. I used to wear the same, every time we win, I wear the same socks, okay? It's just little obsessions. That's normal. When it becomes a D, that's when we're having problems, okay? To delineate between those things. But normal anxiety, normal. For some of you getting on an airplane, is it normal to have a little bit of some anxiety? Sure, it's normal for people. Anxiety would be if you're like heaving the whole way and you have to have a barf bag the whole way on your flight, and you're just, that would be major anxiety. Good question. Other questions?
Yeah. Nutritionally.
Mm-hmm.
We talked, when I first met you, about nutrition. And
Yeah.
we talked anti-inflammatory diet. Speak to that.
Yeah, there's some, I'm sorry.
Well, Coach Cole right here, and I have talked about this some. Bill was asking questions, Barry Collins. And we've talked about organic supplements.
Mm-hmm.
People do.
Yeah.
Speak to that.
There are foods and drinks that obviously lead to more anxiety and depression, and vice versa. If you have anxiety, you definitely don't want to be drinking caffeinated drinks, really at any time, but particularly in the evening, okay? It just kind of wires you up. Again, if you're going to be up all day, it's fine. Chocolate, which is my friend, has theobromine in it, which is it's very similar to caffeine. So certain foods, and I usually go under WebMD, or if you got a dietitian, nutritionist, they can really help you with certain things, particularly if you're an athlete and you've got to supplement certain types of food. But sugars, all of those things, you typically want to stay away from that with anxiety. And anything that has the ene family in it, caffeine, theobromine, those types of things, okay? A lot of folks are going to the Mediterranean diets. It's a really heavy plant-based diet with certain meat. There's a lot of good things out there. It depends on what you do, what you need for your body. Other questions? Yeah.
About the sleep. What is it? They've asked people to take melatonin.
Melatonin, yeah.
But, that's not working, or, does it work? Does it not? Is that
Our kids take melatonin, and a lot of times it works for them. If a person has a true anxiety disorder, you got to treat the anxiety disorder, okay? You can take sleep aids that are going to mask it, but you've got to treat the anxiety, because low serotonin will keep a person awake because it's hard for the brain to shut down. By the way, parents, 97% correlation between anxiety and ADD. Okay, if you have one, there's a 97% you're going to have the other. Very, very high correlation between those two. Okay. So if your kid's forgetting, they're really smart, but they do their homework and then they leave it at home, forget to take it, and you go in their room, it looks like a bomb blew up, or drawers open with stuff. All those things are kind of correlated with OCD as well. So a lot of these kids are very perfectionistic. They have certain areas of their life that they just, they micromanage it, and other areas it looks like they just could care less in. Don't be afraid to ask your kid. Don't be afraid to ask us, are you okay? You ever had thoughts of hurting yourself? It's completely okay to ask them. I do that with my kids. Because most of these folks are like Coach and I. They're introverted. They're not going to tell you. In fact, they would rather go hurt themselves than to tell you they're struggling. Because, it kind of makes them feel like a failure. Sounds crazy, but that's just kind of the way the mind works. So just ask them. I told my daughter, I said, if you ever think about hurting yourself over school, I said, I want you to quit school, okay? Just quit. You don't even have to go to school. I'd rather have you here with no education than not have you here. We talk about those things. Again, I wish it were that simple. It's complex, what goes through the minds of somebody who's struggling. But, treat the anxiety disorder. That will typically make the sleep patterns clear up. Other questions?
You've already spoken to preventing mental health problems down the road. Like, I'm aging, and I don't have one more shift maybe in my whole life. But let's just say, as a coach, as a leader of the family, what are some things, and again, some of it's going to be what you've already said, but you kind of bring us to a close on that too. What are things we can do to prevent mental health problems?
Well, to prevent things, again, we call it self-care, taking care of yourself. When you wake up in the morning, you have a certain amount of energy in the brain. If you expend it on worthless stuff or in relationships that are really unhealthy, some people are in just terrible relationships, marriages or dating relationships or just toxic stuff. Those take a lot of energy out of you. Getting involved in things that you don't have any control over and feeling the emotion of those things. We're all guilty of that. We all try to control things that we don't have any control over. And that's sucking energy out. I try to relate it like this. You're going on a trip every day through the desert from point A to point B. God gives you enough water to get across that desert in a glass every day, but you can't waste it, okay? God says if you waste it on things that don't need the water, then you're not going to have enough for yourself. And that's called self-care. That's where we have to start picking and choosing. I don't want to pour water over here even though that person looks like they need it. That's not my person to give water to. God's got somebody else for that person. And God wants us to, I've often thought, when Lazarus got sick and Mary and Martha called for Jesus and he didn't come immediately and Lazarus died, I know what I'd have done. Probably I'd have gone immediately. Oh my gosh, you mean Lazarus is sick? Let me go heal him. And Jesus stayed away. Once again, he was about his Father's business. But Jesus didn't heal everybody that he came in contact with. We forget that. Jesus did not heal everybody. There were people that begged him to heal them, and Jesus didn't heal. Jesus did healing in the first century to prove his deity, to prove who he was. So it's not our job as people to do every good thing that people want us to do. And that's really hard for me because all of the requests I get, I want to help everybody. At some point, though, I got to say no. Somebody else has got to help you with that. I can't. And that's hard. But if I'm going to survive, and it's really what happened to me back in my 30s, is I was operating off about 3 hours sleep a night. And I wasn't taking care, well, I was taking care of myself, but I was putting way too much energy out and I was getting back. You got to learn to take vacations. You got to learn to do whatever it is that you do that replenishes your soul. Okay? Take care of the body, that's great. But at some point you got to replenish your soul. This retreat that we're building is a place that my desire is that when people come, we help them replenish their soul, to fill it back up, and to teach them how to leave there and live a healthy life. Okay? For some of you, you need to take a break. Some of you may need to change careers. I don't know who I'm talking to, but you know, life can kill you. It really can. And Jesus doesn't want you to exit this earth before it's your time. But we, through our will, can exit the earth before it's God's timing for us to exit the earth. Doing good things. You ever had a pastor come up to you and put the arm around, oh gosh, you'd just be so good teaching this class. Yeah, oh gosh, you'd be so good. I don't have time. Oh no, you got time, you know. And that's hard to say, no, I don't have time. I'm not going to teach the class, Pastor. Okay? It's hard to tell as your pastor, right? I don't want to teach. I can't teach. I don't have time. But you got to learn to stand up for yourself. And it's hard when you're wired like we are, because we don't want to disappoint the pastor. Okay? And we probably could do a really good job of teaching that class. I guess I'm supposed to teach it. And Jesus is going, no, you don't need to teach that class. You need to spend more time with your son, or with your daughter, or with your wife, or for yourself. It's another whole seminar learning about self-care, okay? But yeah, self-care, taking care of yourself. If you don't, you'll burn out. I tell you, a guy that burned out in the Old Testament was Elijah. Elijah got burned out after he called down fire from heaven and, you know, the prophets of Baal. Then he got suicidal, okay? He said, God, take me. I'm done. Take me, okay? He got burned out. And Jesus sent an angel, this is so cool, with a pie. Remember that? Why did he send him with a pie? And I joke and I say, that pie was loaded with Cymbalta. Okay? It had Cymbalta all in it. And he ate that pie because Jesus could have healed him. He didn't need the pie. I mean, Jesus could have just spoke the word from heaven and healed him. But it was obedience. He said, eat this. And Elijah obeyed, ate the pie, got some rest. Two things that the angel told him to do. Eat this, get rest. And then it said his soul was replenished after that. So self-care, very, very, very important. Anything else before we get out of here? If I can help you, and it works in my schedule, I'll be glad to help you. Hopefully, Lord willing, this spring we'll have this place of helping you on a long-term basis, several days or a weekend. Again, Coach is a great place to bring your staff if y'all want to come do some planning. I think that's kind of what God wants me to do, hopefully the rest of my life. I'm 56. Hope to be around another 30 years if Jesus doesn't come back first. He hadn't come back during the seminar yet. But if he doesn't come back, I hope I'm around to do that the rest of my life and to help take care of people and kind of replenish their soul. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak to you and be with you. And if I can help you, I'll be glad to.
We would like to thank you for watching the video. Mental health is a big, big part of our lives. It's in every life, every day. It is a very powerful force in what we do and how we do things. If you need more information, look at the comments below. Please reach out to us if needed. If I can help you in any way, let me know. Thank you.